He's been honored for his academic work as a National AP Scholar, the State of Georgia Certificate of Merit honoree, and by talent identification programs at Duke, Vanderbilt, and Johns Hopkins universities. Recognized nationally as a recipient of the President's Volunteer Service Award for 2015 by the Bruce J. Hine Foundation, and as a distinguished national finalist in the Prudential Spirit of Community Awards. The Technology Association of Georgia 2014 Excalibur Award was given to him for the most creative use of technology, and he is a recipient of the 2015 11 Alive Kids Who Care Award, the Greg Golf Leadership Award, and the Ray Kroc Youth Achievement Award. Recently, he was named one of Business Insider's 20 incredibly impressive kids graduating from high school in 2015. Oh, did I mention he's just graduating high school this year? Greetings, everyone, and welcome from the Technology Association of Georgia. It's Friday, July 24th, 2015, and this is Tech Talk. I'm your host, Frank Baia. If you haven't already heard about him, you will. Jack Griffin, founder of a Georgia nonprofit, Food Finder Georgia. He created the first ever online resource aggregator for food insecure kids, their parents, and adult first responders that puts all of the free food resources just a click away from the need. That's only the beginning of the story. Today, his accomplishments have expanded, turning Food Finder Georgia into a statewide website that now aggregates 1,700-plus free food resources in the state of Georgia. And soon, a free mobile app will also be launched and available for download by an estimated 1.7 million students and teachers in Georgia's 2,300 public schools starting in the fall. Up to the Tech Talk, we speak with a model representative of thought leadership and entrepreneurship, alive and prospering in a new generation of Georgian, as we explore a special kind of startup that's gaining momentum and recognition, and more importantly, a special kind of millennium with a passion to fulfill a single purpose, a world where food insecurity simply doesn't exist for kids anymore. The president and founder of Food Finder Georgia, Jack Griffin. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Jack, welcome to Tech Talk.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
You know, one of the emphasis that we want to put on the discussion today is the fact that you're a graduate of high school in 2015, so the beginning of your career has started extremely early in terms of not only doing something creative, but getting a tremendous amount of recognition. I want to talk a little bit about just exactly how and when you came up with the idea of Food Finder, but maybe let's set out a little gravitas, if you will, maybe get a little bit, put you on the spot, but discuss some of the accolades. I know that TAG obviously recognized you in their 2014 Excalibur Awards, which is an amazing thing when you consider there's nearly 100 applicants and the competition scans across 5 different categories.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty major accomplishment to be recognized, but you've gotten others as well. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I've been very fortunate to receive the recognition I have regarding Food Finder. When I started, I just intended it to, help some kids that went to my school, went to schools in my cluster, but it's been, I've been really shocked to see how many people have started looking towards Food Finder, and I'm really glad to receive the recognition it has. So, obviously, you already mentioned the TAG Excalibur Award. That was probably the first really major accolade I received, and that was just a total surprise, and I was just really happy to receive that. In addition to that, I received the Bruce J. Hine Leadership Foundation Award when I attended Duke Tip over the summer in 2014, and that was given to members of the Duke Tip class focused on leadership and community action. So my co-winner also attended to food insecurity in his home state of Texas. So the fact that both of us executed our projects, we had great success in both of our endeavors, and we both obviously helped kids in need who were in poverty and hungry. It was great that was a particular favorite of mine.
Well, and Greg Goff Leadership Award, Ray Kroc Youth Achievement Award. I mean, I think it's pretty outstanding, and I appreciate your humility in terms of almost not taking them for granted, but being humble enough to say that it was a great compliment. But the reality also is that it's a tremendous validation. I mean, you were even named Business Insider 20 incredibly impressive kids graduating from high school in 2015. So there's a lot to be said about creativity and a lot to be said about innovation. Obviously, you've got both of those, but you've come up with an idea that a lot of people recognize and are supporting, and I hope that the momentum continues. I know it will. Let's go into a little bit about that, though. You were talking about the Food Finder itself and the original concept. Talk a little bit about how and when did you get the idea?
In about the spring of 2013, I was watching a news segment that profiled these two kids in Florida. Medical bills for their late mother cost them and their family everything, so it forced them and their father to live out of a truck. And they had to get ready for school in gas stations. They had to clean themselves up in public libraries. And seeing how tough their situation was, and when I was a kid of only like 13, 14 at the time, it really made me look at the problems that I had to deal with when I was their age of, I think they were 10 and 12 years old, and that I had really no problems when I had to compare myself to them.
Sure.
So when I wanted to find places around my place, around my school, that I could volunteer, that I could donate to, that I can donate goods to, I discovered how surprisingly hard the research was, and that finding these places that actually help these kids in need is no easy task. So when I finally did find just one resource, I was like, I can't imagine what this would be like for a kid who has no food in their stomach, has headaches from not being properly nourished. So then that's when I had the idea to build an aggregator that would collect all these resources, and where a kid in need could just type in the name of their school or the place that they live, and it could save them all this time and just point them to the help that they need.
What a gift. I mean, the clarity that you had at that point. I mean, I understand the comparison in terms of living a traditional environment and obviously not being concerned about where your next meal is going to be, but having enough insight. A lot of conversation goes into now purpose-driven as far as wanting to help out, not just doing technology, but technology that's going to make a purpose-driven contribution to a particular need. And here's a case where you had clarity of focus enough to know that beyond all of the struggle those kids have got to deal with, they're certainly they're probably more lost in terms of not even realizing there is resources, no less where to go to get them. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about the mechanics, actual programming. Did you do the actual programming, or how did that come about?
I'd like to think I can operate Microsoft Word and Chrome pretty easily, but I did not do the actual coding or programming of the site. I did contact a company called Opal in downtown Atlanta and met with the project manager, Dennis Nelson, and he's the one that orchestrated the actual building of the site, and we were working for a solid year, having meetings over Skype, making sure the development of the Food Finder was going the way we wanted to, and in the spring of 2014, that's when Food Finder launched, and I've been incredibly happy with how it turned out.
Okay, describe the process. Kind of go through just a quick step-by-step. I'm concerned about trying to find resources. I'm aware of the site. How do I gain access to the site, and what are the steps that I need to go to as far as, say, user-friendliness?
Mm-hmm. Well, once the site went live, we focused on awareness, and we wanted to make sure that the user really had no question of how to find the info that they needed. So say you're a food insecure student going to, let's say, like my high school, Peachtree Ridge. You can go on a media school computer or a media center computer. Oh. You can go on Food Finder, type in the name of your school, like Peachtree Ridge, and then Food Finder will display a Google Maps type image where a blue pin will be the point around which you searched, so the school that you typed in, and the red points around that point of search are the food resources themselves. So then the student can go ahead and click on one of the food resources. So like click the pin, the name of the resource will be displayed, they'll click on that, and then all of the information that student could ever need will be displayed about that resource. So the name, street address, languages spoken, phone numbers to call, emails to contact, and most importantly, hours of operation. Since many of these resources have specific times and dates where they hand out food, you can't really just show up 24/7 and ask, hey, I need some free food. So it's incredibly important that these students know exactly when and where they can receive the food that they need.
Are you keeping track of conversions in terms of the number of people? And I guess it's kind of difficult at this point to get data enough to track down how they got the information when they reached the resource. But I'm also thinking that sounds like a tremendously empowering thing. I mean, here you're operating from a position of weakness, you're in need, and yet, you know, they talk now about self-directed healthcare. This is about self-direction in terms of helping to fix yourself rather than looking on. I mean, there is a level of dependency, but the fact that you took the initiative to go to the site, took the initiative to find the location, and then actually took the initiative to help your problem and maybe other family members, that's pretty empowering.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about where you are now. You know, one of the classic cliches of marketing is it's where you've been, where you at, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. Let's talk a little bit about the future and just what it's going to look like for you and for Food Finder.
Yeah, sure. So we are in the middle of, we're in the process right now of having Food Finder launch statewide. So Food Finder before now had just been servicing kids in Gwinnett County, but we've expanded the database to cover the entire state of Georgia. So now any student in any county in the state can search around their school and find food resources near them. In addition, Food Finder, probably the next 5 or so years in terms of the future of Food Finder, is transitioning it from a native mobile website into a full-blown App Store, iOS, Android application to be used on smartphones.
Now, do you have an underwriter or a sponsor? Is it a case where, you know, I would assume that some government and nonprofit organizations would not only want to support but help spread the word, not only from Georgia but throughout the country, but also even the private sector? Have you explored that possibility as far as underwriting, or how are you supporting yourself?
Yeah, the immediate next steps are getting the funding. So the estimated cost of the app of Food Finder would be, you know, $40,000 to $50,000, and we've contacted Coca-Cola, Tyson, other big-name companies that do a lot in terms of giving back to people who are in poverty and in situations where they have not nearly enough food. And we have people saying, you know, schedule the meetings, and we'll definitely talk from there. So the opportunities are definitely out there for us. It's just in terms of getting a hold of them and then just starting right away.
The evolution's a process. You can't get to the finish line, but I'll tell you one thing. The concept is not only so obviously practical and necessary, but once again, coming from a young person like yourself, it's a representation of the kind of thinking and the kind of entrepreneurism that I think a lot of us want to foster and see be successful. In that regard, and we're kind of quickly running out of time, but what can TAG radio listeners do to help move Food Finder from a website to an app? And maybe how can we do, I'm guessing in terms of the accolades that you received, that's laid some credibility for you to get access to some of the private sector and nonprofits for the appointments. But is there something that we can all do to help support your efforts?
Yeah, in terms of accessing the private sector, which is probably going to be the largest contributor, there is a donate button. It's a surprise we hadn't had it sooner, but after Indiegogo campaign, we usually had the funds we needed, but not for the app. So there is a donate button on Food Finder's homepage where anyone can. We have a really smooth setup where you can contribute any amount that you want, or a pre-specified amount, and all donations are greatly appreciated. And probably in terms of the future access of the app building, we'd love for any people to contact us with app developers, anyone with experience of probably social-based applications, and any we're always open to receiving pro bono work or discounted rates.
Sure.
My parents are well aware that college is not cheap, but
well, neither is your purpose and the impact that it can make. And I think there's a lot of organizations, a lot of even hackathons and things that have been happening over the last several months, pushing the idea of helping nonprofits, helping purpose-driven situations. And we can't talk enough about, here we are in the United States, and we talk a lot about the successes and the achievements that are made by many in the technology industry. To let one child go without being able to find a place when there are solutions for the problem of having food, it's just not acceptable, and I think a lot of our listeners would agree with that. So hopefully we can stir up a little bit more buzz. You've gotten so much already, I'm sure that we'll be more than glad to add a little bit to the contribution. But one thing before we close is Food Finder. What's the URL?
The whole URL is Food Finder GA, like the abbreviation for Georgia, foodfinderga.org.
Okay, foodfinderga.org. There's a donation button on there. There's probably a way to make a contact to Jack in case there's any pro bono or support that you want to give to this particular project. Certainly worthwhile, both from a concept standpoint, great idea, but from an altruistic and a materialistic standpoint, great job, Jack. Great accolades and much success. I'm sure you're getting so much of it, it's still not enough. It's always good to be told, not only by your friends and family, but by your peers, that you've done something as well as you have. Thank you so much, Jack, for what you've done already, for what is the promise of tomorrow as far as Food Finder, and for taking a few minutes out of, I know, a hectic schedule to join us for a few minutes today on Tech Talk.
Yeah, thank you very, very much.